Hello, welcome back to my channel if you're new. I'm Bree. Today we're going to do a book haul. I have not done a book haul since August and it is almost February now. So I have a lot of books here, which is why I've made myself go on. I wouldn't say it's a book buying ban, it's more of a book buying limit. So right now I have to read 3 books in order to get another book, and I might up that to 4 if I feel like I'm getting too many too quickly. I just don't want it to get out of hand because it got out of hand this year and I have a lot of books here to read, plus ones I've previously hauled, so I'm really trying to work through my TBR this year. But I realized I hadn't hauled a lot of books. I ended up getting a lot because my birthday's in September, so my parents for my birthday went and got me books from Barnes & Noble, and we all went and then we all picked out books, and that was really nice. And then Noah's family also got me some books. And then Christmas came along and my parents also got me a gift card to Barnes & Noble. So then I went and got a bunch of books. Plus they got me books for Christmas because we all exchanged books for Christmas. So I accumulated a lot. And then with that gift card, Barnes & Noble had a 50% off hardback sale and Half Price Books had a 20% off sale. So things got carried away. So now I'm trying to reel myself back in. But I wanted to haul these books and then start the year fresh. So I guess let's get into it. So I won't be talking about any books that are HarperCollins titles because if you don't know, HarperCollins has been on strike. The union has been on strike for over 50 days now, and I believe the last update was that HarperCollins has agreed to meet with them, but that hasn't happened yet. So they have asked everyone to kind of not share their book reviews or the books that HarperCollins has published until they come to the table. And so I won't be talking about any books that are HarperCollins. I've also tried to do my research as best as I could, but I'm not sure that 1 or 2 won't slip in here because if you don't know, it's kind of crazy how publishing companies work. They have a lot of like parent companies or companies underneath them, and it can be very hard to know who the parent company is. So I've tried to do my best, but I'm sorry if I do have one in here. If you know and you see it, just skip past it. So yeah, I just wanted to put that disclaimer in here. I have around 50 books to show you today, and I've kind of divided them into categories. Let's start with horror because it's my smallest stack right now. I picked up Cackle by Rachel Harrison. This one I haven't read yet, but I believe it's about a woman who goes to like a new town, and then this one woman there she starts to become friends with, and something weird is going on with the woman, and I don't know if it's witchy or what. I've heard mixed reviews on this. I've heard it's kind of more of like a cozy horror, and I think that that's something I could get into. I'm a fan of cozy in every genre pretty much, so why not horror? Then this one seems like a funny horror. It's called Suburban Hell by Maureen Kilmer. I read Grady Hendrix' The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I read that, and for some reason this reminds me of it. I think some moms who have to get this demonic force out of their neighborhood, and yeah, it just sounds good. It seems like a fun horror, and that's kind of why I picked it up. And then I picked up Mexican Gothic because I really liked The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. It was talked about to be like Mexican Gothic for fans of Mexican Gothic. And then I also did like T.K. Fisher's What Moves the Dead, which also is a retelling of the fall of the House of Usher, but then was also said for fans of Mexican Gothic. So I had picked this up and I really want to get to it because I really liked both of those. So I think Gothic horror is something I could really enjoy. Then I've got one I'm really excited to get to, and that's The House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. I wanted to get to this in November when Kayla from Books and Lala did the book club about it, but I've been having a really hard time following with readathons and with like book clubs and stuff because once you assign me a book, I don't want to read it. So I haven't got to this, but I'm really excited. It's like a vampire horror story, it seems like, but I think it's less vampire, more like secret society occult thing. And I've heard nothing but good things about Alexis Henderson. I still need to read The Year of the Witching, and I will be getting to it. So I just really feel like Alexis Henderson's going to be an author for me, so I picked it up. So then a genre I've gotten into at the end, towards the end of the year, is literary fiction. With specifically, I've kind of been in the magical realism side of things, though I have read some that are just literary fiction, and it's just a genre that I never thought would be for me, but I have found some books I really love in it. So I am definitely going to be exploring that more this year. And I just have some that immediately called to me because they've been recommended based on the books I had already read. So I'll go into the books I've read, and then I'll go into the ones that are on my TBR. So the first one is my favorite book of the year, Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Tushimura. And this is about kids, and they aren't going to school for various reasons. Then they find a portal in their rooms and their mirrors, and they go through and they are in this castle where they're told that they are competing for a key that will give them one wish. And only one of them gets it, but they have to work together because there's a bunch of different rules. And it just really touched my heart. It really spoke to me, and it was my just absolute favorite book that I read this year. So I have this copy of it, and I'm so happy I picked it up. Then I read this little novella called Miss Ice Sandwich by Miko Kawakami. This is about a little boy who is really fascinated by this woman who works at the sandwich shop, and he calls her Miss Ice Sandwich. And it's just a story, kind of a coming of age story in a way, and it's just him trying to navigate the world, and he doesn't always understand why people are making fun of Miss Ice Sandwich or why things are the way they are, and he's questioning a lot of things, and he just doesn't fit in. And it's just a story about friendship and, yeah, coming of age. It was a really good novella. Then we've got Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, and I read this recently for a reading vlog that just came out, so you can go ahead and watch it if you'd like. And this is another little short novella about a woman who works in a convenience store. She's just happy where she is. The convenience store gives her a lot of routine, and she kind of knows all the rules of the store and everything, and it just brings her a lot of peace. And a lot of people are not happy with that. They think that she should be doing more, she should be getting married, she should be trying to move up in jobs and all this stuff. And it's about her coming to terms with her own dreams and her own happiness working at this convenience store when everybody else is telling her she should want more, she should want something different. And this was a book that just really stuck with me. Next we have Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Tsukigawa. And this is a story about a guy who works at this restaurant. He makes dorayaki, and with it you like put sweet bean paste inside of them. It's like a pastry, like a pancake with sweet bean paste. I'm not describing this well. And then this woman comes and she wants a job there, and he ends up hiring her, and it's about their friendship and about his growth as a character. It's about like accepting people and their differences. I thought it was pretty okay. It was not my favorite. I just wanted a little bit more from the story than what it gave me, but I really did enjoy the descriptions of food in here. I thought that was really good, and the friendship was good, but I just think it could have been a little stronger. Then we have my books that I haven't read. So the first we have is The Inheritance Games of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. I don't believe I'm pronouncing her name correctly. This is like a magical realism. So this is set in Ecuador, and it is about this woman who I believe she is dying, and she calls all her ancestors or her relatives back to hometown, and I think she turns into a tree at some point, and the tree starts losing its powers. It says alternating between Orquídea's past and her descendants' present. The inheritance of Orquídea Divina is about what we knowingly and unknowingly inherit from our ancestors, the ties that bind, and reclaiming our power. And so I've heard a lot of good things about this, and I've really found that I think I could really get into magical realism, and so I definitely want to give this a try because I've heard people who really like magical realism have really enjoyed this book. So then another magical realism book that I'm really excited to get to is Popicio by Leonie Ross. It's about an archipelago. How do you pronounce that word? Archipelago called Popicio, and the author is from Jamaica, and it's supposed to be inspired by her Jamaican homeland. So I believe this is about a guy who is like, he was anointed by the gods to make each resident one perfect meal when the time is right. And I think it's just his story, and I don't know much about it, but I just think it's gonna be really cool, and I've seen it everywhere, and I just really wanted to pick it up, so I got it. This is one that I thought about picking up, and I kept putting it off, but then I decided to finally get it, and I'm so happy I did. So that's The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa, and this is a Japanese translated book. I realize I didn't say for a lot of them, but these are all Japanese translated fiction. This is translated by Philip Gabriel. Sweet Bean Paste is translated by Allison Watts. Convenience Store Woman has been translated by Ginny Tapley Takamori. Miss Ice Sandwich has been translated by Louise Heal Kawai. So I meant to say those, but I didn't. So this is translated by Steven Snyder from Japanese, and this is about like this. I don't know if it's post-apocalyptic, but it is basically in this world where objects that the police can like make them disappear. So say like paper. Police can just decide no one's going to remember paper and take away the memories from everyone, but there's certain people who can still remember that thing, and if they're found out to remember it, they're taken away and no one really knows what happens to them. So if you remember something, you really want to not let anyone know. So this writer, her editor, is in danger, and so she's going to help hide him, and it unravels this whole mystery. And I just think this idea of things and how they're tied to our memory, this is just going to be so interesting. And it says it's a stunning novel about the trauma of loss, and I think it will be just such a good commentary on that. So I'm very excited to get to this one. So this next one is If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. I think it follows 4 girls in Seoul, Korea. So I believe that these women they go and they entertain men, and it's about like the beauty standards they have to adhere to and how they have to survive in like a world that has so many rules for them. And I've just heard really good reviews. I saw a couple reviews that really made me want to read this, and again, Reagan from Peruse Project was one of those, and it just seems so interesting to me and a story that I have never heard of before. So I picked up this one. Then I have Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey, and I don't really know much about this one. I just know it's supposed to be atmospheric and some climate change things, but I think it deals with even more than that, like grief and loss and things like that. And I kind of want to go into this not knowing a whole lot, because I just think it's one of those books that will be better off just not knowing as much. But I have heard really good things about this author, and I've heard more about Once There Were Wolves, and I do want to get to that one too. But I really liked the perspective of talking about climate change and things like that in this book, so that's why I picked this one up first. So this is 5 Wounds by Kirsten Valdez Quaid, and this is following a family, and I think it's following multiple generations of a family, but it's about their like what they're going through and each person's struggle. And I just saw this from Allie from Alice Pages. Her YouTube video, she just says it's the most human novel she's ever read, and that really intrigued me. So I don't know too much about this, but I did pick it up. Then we have Human Acts by Han Kang, and this is translated, I believe, from Korean, translated by Deborah Smith, and I've heard good things about their other novel, which is The Vegetarian. So it's following this uprising, the student uprising that happened in Korea. I think a lot of students were killed during this uprising, and so it's following the victims and their story and how they deal with it. So I don't know too much about this, but I seen a couple people talk about it, and I just felt like it was a story I wanted to learn about because I have never heard of this part of history, and I just want to learn more stories like these. Now I think we should go into fantasy because it is probably my biggest deck. So I split them up into fantasy, and then I did like cozy fantasy sci-fi because I have quite a few of those as well. So let's start with just regular fantasy. So the first I have is actually a full series. So I picked up the first 2, and then I've been trying to not buy more than one in a series until I've read the whole series, but for some reason I was just like, I know that I'm going to love this series. I've also read Libba Bray before, so that's The Diviners. So I have read Libba Bray in high school, and I loved that Gemma Doyle series, and so I was like, you know what, I already know the author a bit, so I felt more confident. I still probably shouldn't have, but I bought the entire series. And does it bug me that they don't match? Yes. But what can you do about it? Apparently it bugs everyone, so I'm not alone in that. So I actually read this one at the beginning of this month, and then I am 200 pages from the end of this one and loving them. So, I don't regret my decision to pick up the whole thing because I want to read this series. I'm going to continue it. And my camera cut me off. So I just want to continue reading this because it is just so good. So I'm so happy I have them. But this is set in 1920s in New York, and it's following diviners who basically, they have like magic where like some people have like where if you touch someone you heal them, another person has if you touch an object you can get people's memories from it, and it deals a lot with like the occult and paranormal. And we're following a couple different characters who get swept up into this mystery because people are being murdered and they're being like sacrificed, and they believe something more sinister is happening. And so they start to figure it out. So it's kind of a murder mystery with fantasy. So I've been reading these and it's definitely a new favorite series. I'm so happy I picked it up. I don't know why. I never knew of this before and why I didn't pick it up sooner, because this is like my cup of tea. So that's the Diviner series. So then I read in a reading vlog recently, I think it was in December, read Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and I picked up Bloodmarked because I really, really enjoyed Legendborn and I needed to know what was going to happen. So I now have the second book, and Legendborn is about a young woman, Bree, who goes after her mom dies. She's actually in high school, but she gets into this like accelerated program that lets her go to college early, it seems like. So she goes and she gets sucked into the secret society trying to figure out what happens to her mom. It's an Arthurian retelling, and just a lot of stuff goes down, and it was really good. And this one, the first one left off on a cliffhanger, and this one's just going to start right from there, so I'm super excited to get to this. Then I have Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. I really have no idea what this is about. Artemisia is training to be a Grey Sister, a nun who cleanses the bodies of the deceased so that their souls can pass on. Otherwise, they rise as spirits with ravenous hunger for the living, and someone's going to be attacked and things are going to go down. But the reason I picked this up was because I read Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson and really, really loved it. It reminded me a bit of Howl's Moving Castle, but darker, and I loved it. So I have that one. So I have been trying to get more picky about my YA fantasy, so I chose this one because I know that I really liked Margaret Rogerson's other work, and I've heard good things about this one, so that's why I picked this one up. Then I have For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten, and this is about basically the first daughter is raised for the throne and the second is to be a sacrifice for the wolf. And so I think we're following the younger daughter who is supposed to be a sacrifice for the wolf, and she knows that she's been raised her whole life for the sacrifice, and I think she decides she doesn't want to do it. Really, I picked it up because it was a dark fantasy, and I've been liking the darker kind of gothic fantasy, so I want to see if I'll like this, and it was at half price for a really good price, so I picked it up. You can see I kind of got carried away sometimes. This is Pure Nessie by Susanna Clark, and I picked this up because I have literally heard nothing but good things about this, and it seems like a trippy, like, what is the word where it's a big maze, and it's like a never-ending labyrinth, that's the word. It's like a story about a labyrinth, and we're following Pure Nessie, who helps out at this house, and I think doors start leading to more doors, and it's a big labyrinth of a house, and Pure Nessie gets like wrapped up in the mystery of it. Honestly, I want to go into this not really knowing much because I think it's just going to be a kind of interesting fantasy that I think would be ruined a little bit if I knew too much. So that's why I don't know too much about that one. Then I picked up Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercott, and this is a Baba Yaga retelling. So I think it takes place in like Eastern Europe, I really only know that it's like these two kids go back to their home after their parents have died and left them this house, and it has a house on chicken legs and things start happening, and I don't know why, but this just seems like my kind of book. It's like gothic-y, it's got a retelling in it which I love, and you got kind of like a weird house on chicken legs, you know, things like that. It called to me, and I really want to read more like Jewish folklore and just folklore in general from different places around the world. I just really enjoy folklore stories, so this is why I picked this one up. Then we've got The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk. This one I don't know much about it, except for I believe the main character is not supposed to have magic because she's a woman, and she does, and so she has to hide it, but then she finds a grimoire or something. Towards like the end of the year, I got a little carried away with just like picking up books that I sounded interesting, and it does sound really interesting, but like knowing what they're about now is kind of hard for me, and also my brain is kind of mush, so I'm sorry. I'm just gonna do my best. Words are so hard right now. So then I have All the Murmuring Bones by A.G. Slater, and I had never heard of this until I went to Half Price Books and I saw this on the shelf, and I just picked it up because something about the cover called to me, and then I had to take it home because it sounds like a book I really enjoy. And then now I've been seeing it a bit more. I feel like that always happens. And so it's about a family who makes a deal with like the Mer people. I think it starts to go wrong. They don't keep up their end of the bargain, and it's about a dark family secrets, magic, and witches, and creatures of myth of the sea, of strong women and the men who seek to control them. So I read that and I was like, yeah, you're coming home with me. It's a fairy tale gothic story. Need I say more? I saw this and I've been wanting to pick it up. And so I finally did because I'm like, this sounds like everything I like. It reminds me of The Diviners a bit, but in a different way. So it's The Monsters We Defy by Leslie Penelope. Our main character, Clara, she can talk to spirits, and it's kind of now become a curse. So it binds her to the spirit world. And so when a dark spirit gives her the chance to be free, if she goes on this heist, she signs up for it, and so she has to go and do a heist with this unlikely group of people. And so it sounds like it's going to be a little bit of found family, which is always my jam. And I really like heist stories. This one seems like it's going to be a accumulation of a lot of things I really enjoy, and I just really want to get to this one. I'm hoping to get this one in February, but don't hold me to it because it's not a TBR. Because if I promise that I'm going to, then I won't, but I hope to. Then I have a book my sister-in-law gifted me, and I don't think I've been saying which ones are gifted, which ones are not. I don't know if I've gotten to the gifted ones. Things are running together. But I do know that this one was gifted by my sister-in-law, and that's The Golden Enclaves by Naomi Novik. This is the last book in the Sholomance series, and it's about a magical school. The school's like trying to kill them, and they have to fight it, and things like that. And it's a fun, fast series. It took me a little bit to get into the first one because the writing style is like the main character is like talking to you, the reader, and I don't really read a lot of stories like that, and it took a little bit to get used to, but the last one left on a cliffhanger, and I'm interested to see what's going to happen, and this one I think wraps it all up, so I'm excited to get to it. Then we have One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig, and this is about a woman, I think she's also not supposed to have powers, and she has like a spirit living inside of her that tells her to do things. Yeah, he protects her, he keeps her secrets, and she's gonna have to take on the king or something. I don't know. It's a gothic fantasy, and I wanted it, so I picked it up. Let's get to fantasy, cozy fantasy, and cozy sci-fi. I've lumped them together because I don't have too many sci-fi, so I think we'll start with the sci-fi part, and then we'll go into the cozy fantasy. So I only have the second and third here. The first one's on my shelf, and I'm just not going to grab it. So that's Before the Coffee Gets Cold is the first one, then Tales from the Cafe, and then Before Your Memory Fades by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This one's translated from Japanese by, I think they're all translated by Geoffrey Chaucelat, but I don't have the first one to confirm that, but these two are. And it's about a time-traveling cafe where you go, and if you sit in a certain spot and you drink this coffee, you can go back in time, and you can only do it once, and it's like, what would you change if you could? They're short, like, stories, so they're all interconnected, but it's 4 short stories, and this continues it, and I just really loved the first one, and it was a really good book that I didn't think was going to be favorite, but then really snuck up on me. So I have the next two because it was buy one get one half off, so I got them. Then we have a book I'm currently reading, and I wouldn't say this is necessarily cozy, but I didn't have anywhere else to put sci-fi. I guess I could have put it in my mystery section, but I didn't. So that's The Spare Man by Mary Robinette Kowal, and this is a sci-fi mystery where they are traveling from Earth to Mars, and it's this couple who are on their honeymoon, and we're following the main perspective, Tesla, who is the main woman, and she's the heir to this big company that has created a lot of tech stuff, and she's undercover and no one there knows who she is, but her husband gets wrapped up in a murder and they think it's him, so he gets arrested, so now she's trying to figure out what happened to him. And it's a sci-fi murder mystery. I'm trying to get more into sci-fi this year, and I think mysteries with some speculative elements are really for me, so that's why I wanted to try a sci-fi murder mystery. Then we have Light from Uncommon Stars by Raika Aoki, and this is a book that I've seen Reagan from Peruse Project talk about. It was also in the cozy end cap at Barnes & Noble, and I went there and I was looking at all the books, and that's why I picked some of them up, I think. And this one I had heard of from Reagan from Prue's Project. And it's also blurbed by TJ Klune. All I know is that it's like this person who has to sell souls of violin players to like get their soul back or something like that. And then they meet a transgender youth who they are supposed to kill, and it's their last like sacrifice, and they form an unlikely bond. Just what I know of that synopsis really intrigues me, and I'm looking for some more cozy sci-fi in my life, and this sounds like a fun time. Let's start with ones you've seen me talk about before. So the one that has introduced a lot of people to cozy fantasy is Legends and Lattes. So I read this for a reading vlog. It's one of my favorite books of the year. It was a perfect cozy fantasy. It is about an orc Viv and a succubus Tandri. And Viv opens a coffee shop and hires Tandri, and then there's Thimble, and there's Cal, and there's a cat named Amity, and it's just about them running the coffee shop. And I know that sounds like there's no plot, but there is a plot. It just makes you feel safe and cozy, and it's just a great story. And it really is like this high fantasy, like it feels like D&D in a way. And my husband, I got him to listen to it on audiobook because Travis Baldree is an audiobook narrator, has narrated like 200 audiobooks, and he narrates his own book, and it was really good. And my husband really enjoyed it, listening to it, and he said it reminds him a lot of D&D, and it actually has prompted him and his friends to start a D&D campaign again. I don't know, I'm giving you that tangent, but yeah, this book made my husband play D&D again. Then we have The Very Secret Society of Regular Witches by Sungu Mandana. I picked this up because it was kind of marketed as like The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This is definitely much more of a romance to me than The House on the Cerulean Sea was, and it was more urban fantasy than full fantasy, and so I didn't like it quite as much as The House on the Cerulean Sea, but I do think it's a nice, cozy fantasy book. And it's about a woman she does like YouTube videos about witchy things, but she's actually a witch, but in this world people don't know about witches, so they don't really think that she is a witch in these videos, but someone does contact her and says that they know that she's a real witch, and they want her to come teach these 3 children that are at their house that are witches. And so she goes there, and it's a found family and everything. I just wish we had more time with learning magic with the kids, and a little less romance, but I still think it was a good book. In my last reading vlog you might have seen, but that's Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett, and this has become my new favorite cozy fantasy. I still love House on the Cerulean Sea, but this one has really, I think, right up there. Now, I will say this is probably more like soft fantasy than full cozy. There's a couple dark scenes where like people are killed and you see it, so it's not like there's no violence. So I'd say maybe more soft fantasy, but a lot of the book is pretty cozy feeling. And it's following this woman, Emily Wilde, and she is doing an Encyclopedia of Fairies. And she's traveled to, it's Sweden, I believe. Is it Sweden or is it Norway? I think it's Sweden. And it's set back in the 1800s, and she is going to finish her book that's about fairies, and she just needs to go to this place and document the fairies there. And then she's followed by Bramblebee, who is like another researcher in her department, and the banter between them is so great. And it's about like their story documenting these fairies, and again, it doesn't sound like much, but they get into some fairy shenanigans, and it's amazing. It's going to be a series, and I cannot wait for the next one because I absolutely fell in love with this. There's a perfect amount of academia type stuff in here. She literally talks about the fairies, gives you the lore of the fairies. There's footnotes. So it's like, if you want like academia where you're actually like learning about fairies too, plus a story, pick this up. So now we're into what I haven't read. So I picked up as one of my books that I can pick up when I've read 3 books, and that's Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher, because I have fallen in love with T. Kingfisher. I read Sword Heart, which I still need to purchase, and loved it, and I've read Nettle and Bone and What Moves the Dead. And I really want to read more of T. Kingfisher's cozy fantasy. I have a lot of her horror. I have her 2 horror, Twisted Ones and Hollow Places, but I really love the fantasy side of her works. So I picked up this. It's first in a series, and I don't know much about it except for it's a paladin, and he's living only for the chance to be useful before he dies. And all that changes when he encounters a fugitive named Grace in an alley and witnesses an assassination attempt gone wrong. And now they must navigate a web of treachery beset all sides by spies and poisoners, while a cryptic killer stalks one step behind. Say no more. I'm really gonna just pick up T. Kingfisher's entire backlist and just read through it. Then, this one I know is from my sister. She got me The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Edison, and this was also on the cozy fantasy end cap. I have a feeling this is going to be more that soft fantasy I was talking about. I'm just going to read the back because I hadn't actually read this before. Born of a marriage made only as part of a treaty, the youngest son of the emperor has lived his entire life in exile, far from his father in the imperial court. He knows little of the rituals of the empire, and he knows less about the deadly intrigue that surrounds the government and the court. But when his father and 3 half-brothers die suddenly, Maya is summoned to take his rightful place on the throne. It has said that it's a hopeful story of a single decent person doing his best in a difficult situation. I had wanted to get that one because I honestly was just going to buy everything on the end cap, but I restrained myself, so I'm happy my sister got that one for me. And then she also got me Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, which is supposed to be like Bridgerton, but fantasy and fae. And it's about a woman who, I think there's an incident and somehow she loses half her soul, and so she doesn't have as much fear or embarrassment as everyone else. And then I think she has to go marry the king, and she is drawn into fairy affairs when he discovers that she has half a soul. A lot of the cozy fantasies, I was just like, read a sentence, sign me up, you know? Because I know that I love cozy fantasy. It's just been something that I really know that I love, so I'm just eating it all up at this moment. This was also on the end cap for that cozy fantasy, but I actually saw it at Half Price Books and had already picked it up, and I didn't know what it was, and I read the back and I was like, this sounds like my kind of book, so I got it. And then a little bit later I went and I saw it, so I was like, well, sounds like I made the right choice. So this is called Strange Practice by Vivian Shawn. It's a Dr. Greta Helsing novel. Greta Helsing, who works on like the dead, she treats the undead for a host of ills: vocal strains and banshees, arthritis and barrow-rights, and entropy in mummies. It's a quiet supernatural adjacent life until a sect of murderous monks emerges, killing human and undead Londoners alike. And so she has to stop it. I literally read the back. I pulled it off the shelf with my husband. I read, "Meet Greta Helsing, Doctor to the Undead." And I was like, yep. And then I gave it to him and he read the back and he was like, yep, that's coming home with us. The last stack, we're going to get through this really quickly because I think I've already been recording for an hour. So I read this for a reading vlog, so I won't go too much into it, but that's Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. It's a fantasy mystery. I say fantasy mystery, it's more mystery, sprinkle of fantasy. And it's about a guy who was suspected of murder. He left town. They never had enough evidence to hold him. And it's about him and this girl who, it was their friend who died. I'm pitching this horribly. And he comes back and then the secrets are going to unravel. And it's on an island called Sersha off the coast of Oregon. So yeah, the atmosphere, great. The mystery, it was okay. Then we have the second book, Shady Hollow. This is Cold Clay. This is the second one by Gina Black, and I don't know if I hauled the first one, but I do have the first one and I read it and I really did like it. It's a nice middle of the road or cozy mystery, so I had a good time with it and I wanted to pick up the rest of it. This is a writing duo who writes this, and it's about forest creatures and mysteries in their forest. Need I say more? Then I picked up this one because I have allowed myself a couple anticipated releases this year. I have a list and then I've not really strayed from that. So, and I'm not supposed to. My husband is keeping me in check. But this is the newest book in the Pendergast series, which I don't talk about like at all on my channel. This is The Cabinet of Dr. Lang. And they're these like thriller mysteries that are somewhat paranormal. I just think that they seem like the thriller that's not gonna be great. And while there are things that I don't think are perfect, I fly through these books. I like eat them up. They're so thrilling. Like the tension is just so good throughout the whole thing. I like Pendergast. You're never like really getting Pendergast's like point of view, but I like them. I like the story. I've read all 20 at this point. It sucked me in. It's, you know, one of those series that you just binge and like you don't need to explain why you love it to people. You just do, even if you're like, objectively, is this the best series? No, but I love it. So that's where we're at. This is the 21st book and we're going back in time in this one. Then we have The Paradox Hotel by Rob Hart. This is like a sci-fi mystery. All I know is that there's like parallel worlds and people go to this hotel and they can like jump through dimensions or jump through time, and stuff starts going wrong because people start going mad like the more that they do it. And I saw Reagan from Bruce Project talk about this, and I picked it up, and I had read the synopsis, and I just want to again try more sci-fi mystery thriller. And I've heard like she really liked this, and I trust her reviews, so I got it. Then we have The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman, which is the third in the Thursday Murder Club series, and I really love the first two. It's elderly sleuthing group. They live in a retirement community where they come together and they solve mysteries. The first one is they solve cold cases, but then they find themselves involved in a real life mystery in their hometown. They all have different backgrounds that make them so interesting, and Elizabeth's, we got a little bit more of her background in the second one, and I was really here for it, and I have no idea what this one's going to hold, but I will pick up the entire series because I love it so much. So if you read the first one and you liked it but you were kind of hesitant to continue, I would try the second one just because I really do think he improves upon everything that he needed to. Then I picked up They Never Learned by Lane Fargo because I just need to know. Everyone loves this, and it's kind of like a good for her thriller, and I haven't really read any of those. I don't know if they're really going to be for me, but it's about a professor who kills these like college boys that are doing bad things, and now she is probably going to be caught, and so she's trying to like cover it up. I don't know. But I have to know. I have to know why everyone loves this, so I picked it up when I saw it at half price. I was like, yep, it's time. Then we have True Crime Story by Joseph Knox. I've heard a couple people review this and really enjoy it, so I got it. It's supposed to be like a person solving a true crime story. It's like talking about this girl who goes missing, and it's this reporter, I think, who's trying to solve it. And it's through interviews with her closest friends and family, and they're piecing together like what really happened. So I've heard it kind of reads like a podcast or something. Like there's different like interview style and stuff. So mixed media, that's the word I'm looking for. So I'm really intrigued to read this. Okay, that's over. I feel like my brain is mush, and I feel like it's a good thing I'm doing this book buying limiting because I do not need to be hauling this many books. I'm not judging you if you buy a lot of books. It's just for me, I'm getting overwhelmed with how many options I have and how much I just am buying books. And I realized I was buying books because I like going to the bookstore and collecting them, but it was getting a little out of hand. So I was purchasing for the wrong reasons. So I'm reeling myself back in. Yeah, if you made it to the end, thank you so much. I can't even imagine how long this is right now. But yeah, if you want to leave a like or a comment down below, I'd really appreciate it. And I love chatting with you guys in the comments. So yeah, I will see you next time.